Something is happening on Jupiter, and it is happening faster than anyone expected. 400 million miles from where you are sitting right now, a storm wider than our entire planet is unraveling. A storm that has raged for centuries, a storm that was supposed to be permanent, is dying. And what is replacing it may be far more dangerous. Listen carefully. The great red spot, that iconic crimson eye staring back at us across the void, is shrinking. Not slowly, not gently. It is collapsing at a rate that has stunned everyone who has ever pointed a telescope toward the largest world in our solar system. 100 years ago, 3 Earths could fit inside it. Today, barely one, and the numbers are accelerating. But shrinking is only the surface of the story. Because Jupiter is not just a distant curiosity, a pretty marble hanging in the dark. Jupiter is the gravitational king of everything that orbits our sun. It is more than twice as massive as all the other planets in this solar system combined. It bends space. It steers comets. It swallows asteroids whole. And every subtle shift in its titanic body sends ripples outward into the delicate architecture that keeps our world safe. Think about that. The thing keeping you alive may depend on the moods of a planet you will never touch. For most of human history, we told ourselves a comforting story. We called Jupiter our guardian, our shield, the great cosmic vacuum cleaner that intercepts the killers hurtling in from the outer dark before they can reach the fragile blue dot we call home. And there is truth in that story. Jupiter's immense gravity has, again and again, pulled catastrophe away from us. But here is what the comforting story leaves out. A shield can also be a slingshot. The same gravity that pulls objects in can hurl them out. The same force that captures a wandering comet can, with the slightest change in geometry, fling it inward toward the sun, toward the terrestrial planets, toward us. Jupiter does not protect us out of kindness. It has no kindness. It obeys only physics. And physics does not care whether we survive. Now something in that physics is changing. Deep within Jupiter's bands, the winds are speeding up. Jets of gas racing at speeds that would tear any earthly structure to atoms are intensifying year after year in ways the models did not predict. The atmosphere is heating in places it should be cooling. Vast dark ovals are forming and vanishing. And in the ultraviolet, in wavelengths the human eye can never see, auroras crackle across the poles with an energy output thousands of times greater than anything Earth has ever produced. Jupiter is awake. Jupiter is restless, and we are only beginning to understand why. Consider the scale of what we are dealing with. If you hollowed out Jupiter, you could pour 1,300 Earths inside it. Its storms are not weather in any sense you know. They are self-sustaining engines, larger than continents, that have been turning for longer than human civilization has existed. The great red spot may have been spinning since before the pyramids were built, since before written language, since before our ancestors first looked up and wondered what those lights in the sky truly were. And now, in our lifetime, it is breaking. There is a pressure at the heart of that planet so extreme that hydrogen, the lightest, most familiar element in the universe, stops behaving like a gas. It stops behaving like a liquid. It becomes a metal, a vast, churning ocean of liquid metallic hydrogen, conducting electricity, generating a magnetic field so powerful that if you could see it from Earth, it would appear larger than the full moon in our sky. That magnetic field is a monster. It stretches millions of miles into space. It captures particles from the sun and accelerates them into lethal radiation belts. An invisible sea of energy so violent it would kill an unshielded human in minutes. Our robotic explorers, built to survive the impossible, are slowly being cooked alive every time they pass through it. Their electronics degrading, their sensors flickering, racing to gather what they can before the radiation silences them forever. This is the world that is changing. And change, on a body this immense, is never small. We like to imagine we are safe, insulated by distance, protected by the sheer, unfathomable gulf of empty space between our world and everything that could harm it. But distance is an illusion of comfort. In 1994, the entire planet watched as a shattered comet, torn apart by Jupiter's gravity, slammed into its atmosphere piece by piece. Each impact released energy equivalent to hundreds of times the entire nuclear arsenal of the human species. Each scar left behind was larger than the Earth itself. We watched that happen in real time, and every scientist who saw it understood the same quiet, terrible truth. That comet was never meant to hit Jupiter. It was meant to wander the outer solar system, harmless forever. It was Jupiter that reached out and pulled it in. It was Jupiter that decided its fate. The same hand that catches can also throw. So when that hand begins to tremble, when the winds accelerate and the storms collapse and the magnetic field convulses in ways we cannot yet explain, the only rational response is to pay attention. Not with panic, with precision. Because something in Jupiter is getting worse, and it is getting worse fast. And the machinery of our solar system is far more delicately balanced than we ever wanted to believe. You were told Jupiter was stable, eternal, a fixed point in a chaotic universe. It was never true. Everything up there is moving. Everything is churning. And the forces waking up inside the largest planet in our sky are forces that have, in the deep past, reshaped the very orbits of the worlds around it, including, perhaps, our own. This is not a story about a distant planet. This is a story about the invisible threads that connect that planet to your life, to the sky above your head, to the odds that have, so far, allowed our species to exist at all. Because the truth is simple, and it is heavy. We are not separate from the cosmos. We are inside it, bound to it, at the mercy of bodies so large that our entire history is a single blink against their slow, grinding turns. And one of those bodies is changing before our eyes. The question is not whether Jupiter matters to us. The question is how much and how soon. Over the next hour, we are going to descend into that question. We are going to travel across 400 million miles of vacuum into a world of metallic oceans and lightning larger than nations. We are going to confront what is actually happening in Jupiter's atmosphere right now. The storms that are dying, the winds that are rising, the radiation that is climbing. And we are going to ask the uncomfortable question that most people never dare to ask. If the guardian of our solar system is changing, what does that mean for the ones it was guarding? Keep listening, because what you are about to learn will change the way you look at that bright point of light in the night sky. The one you have seen 1,000 times and never truly understood. It is not just a planet. It is an engine, a force, a presence that has shaped the destiny of every world it touches. And it is not finished with us yet. To understand what is going wrong, you first have to understand what Jupiter truly is. Not a planet in the way you think of planets, Jupiter is a failed star. Hold that thought for a moment. When our solar system was young, a swirling disk of gas and dust circling an infant sun, Jupiter began to grow. It gathered matter with a greed that no other world could match. Hydrogen, helium, the same raw ingredients that fuel the stars. It grew and grew, and if it had gathered just a little more, perhaps 80 times its current mass, the pressure at its core would have ignited, fusion would have begun, and our sky would have held 2 suns. It fell short, but only just. And that near miss left a scar. Jupiter still glows, not with reflected sunlight alone, but with its own inner heat, a slow, ancient warmth leaking out from the crushing pressures at its heart. It radiates more energy than it receives from the sun, nearly twice as much. Which means that somewhere deep inside that world, an engine is still running, still burning off the heat of its violent birth. 4.5 billion years later. Think about what that means. Jupiter is not a dead ball of gas drifting in the cold. It is a dying furnace, a creature still warm from the moment of its creation, exhaling heat into the void, driving weather systems from the inside out. And that internal heat is one of the reasons its storms are so violent, so persistent, so utterly beyond anything our own planet could ever produce. On Earth, our weather is powered by the sun, warmth from above, storms that rise and die in days or weeks. On Jupiter, the storms are powered from below. They are fed by the planet's own restless heart. And that is why they can last for centuries. That is why the great red spot has churned for so long that we cannot even be certain when it began. It is not a storm in the way a hurricane is a storm. It is a wound in the atmosphere that never healed. A vortex so deep it may extend hundreds of miles down into the planet, anchored to forces we still do not fully comprehend. And now, imagine that wound beginning to close. That is what we are watching. The most stable feature in the solar system, apart from the sun itself, is losing its grip. And when something that permanent begins to change, it forces a terrible question upon us. If that can change, what can't? We built our entire sense of safety on the assumption that the large things are the stable things, that the mountains do not move, that the oceans stay in their basins, that the planets keep their appointed rounds silent and predictable across the sky. This is the story we tell ourselves so that we can sleep. The cosmos is vast, yes, but it is orderly. It is a clockwork, and clockwork does not surprise you. Jupiter is here to tell us that the clock is not what we thought. Descend now, in your imagination, into that atmosphere. Not gently. Nothing about Jupiter is gentle. The outermost layers are wisps of ammonia ice, catching the distant sunlight, painting those famous bands of cream and rust and gold. Beautiful from afar. Serene. A watercolor world. It is a lie. Fall deeper and the pressure begins to build. The temperature climbs. The winds, already screaming at speeds that would flatten any city on Earth, grow more violent still. There is no ground here, no surface to break your fall. Just gas becoming thicker and hotter and heavier mile after mile, until the very concept of falling loses meaning. Until the atmosphere itself becomes a kind of ocean, denser than water, black and crushing and endless. There is nowhere to land on Jupiter. There is only down. And this is where the human mind begins to break against the scale of the thing. We evolved on solid ground. Our bodies, our instincts, our entire imagination assumes a floor beneath our feet and a sky above our heads. Jupiter offers neither. It is a world that is all sky, a bottomless atmosphere that swallows light, swallows matter, swallows the very idea of a place to stand. To confront Jupiter is to confront how small and specific our understanding of a world really is. Deeper still, and something extraordinary happens. The pressure grows so extreme, millions of times greater than the air pressure at Earth's surface, that hydrogen surrenders. It can no longer remain a gas. It cannot even remain a normal liquid. The atoms are squeezed so tightly that their electrons break free and begin to flow. The hydrogen becomes a metal, a vast, planet-spanning ocean of liquid metallic hydrogen, silver and impossible, conducting electricity through a sea larger than every ocean on Earth combined. This is the true heart of the beast. And it is this metallic ocean, churning as the planet spins, that generates Jupiter's colossal magnetic field, a dynamo of unimaginable power. The strongest magnetic field of any planet in the solar system, 20,000 times stronger than the feeble field that surrounds our own world. Consider the philosophical weight of that. The same element that fills a child's balloon, the same gas that burns quietly in the fusion furnace of the sun. Under enough pressure, it becomes something no human hand will ever hold. A metal that exists nowhere on Earth, that we can barely create for fractions of a second in our most advanced laboratories. Jupiter holds an ocean of it, permanently, casually, as a simple consequence of being large. Size changes everything. This is the lesson Jupiter teaches, again and again. The rules you know, the rules of chemistry, of matter, of what things can and cannot be. Those rules bend when the scale becomes great enough. Water becomes stranger. Hydrogen becomes metal. Storms become immortal. And gravity becomes not a gentle tug, but a sculptor of destinies, reaching across hundreds of millions of miles to decide the fate of worlds it will never touch. We are accustomed to thinking of ourselves as significant, as the observers, the ones who measure and name and understand. But stand in the presence of Jupiter. Truly stand there in your mind, at the edge of that endless falling atmosphere. And a different feeling takes hold. You begin to understand insignificance, not as an insult, as a fact, as a liberation even. Here is a world that does not know you exist and never will. A world that would crush you without malice, without awareness, simply by being what it is. A world so large that our entire planet is a marble against it, and our entire history a flicker too brief for it to notice. And yet, this indifferent giant is bound to us, chained to us by the invisible geometry of gravity. Every asteroid it deflects, every comet it captures, every subtle shift in its enormous body sends consequences rippling across the solar system. Consequences that, given enough time, arrive at our doorstep. We are not separate from Jupiter's story. We are a footnote in it. And footnotes sometimes are the first things to be erased. This is the paradox we must hold. Jupiter does not care about us, and Jupiter may determine everything about us. It is both utterly remote and intimately connected, both a distant light in the sky and a hand on the scale of our survival. And now that hand is moving. The metallic ocean churns, the magnetic field convulses. The storms that seemed eternal begin to fade, and the heat still leaking from that 4-billion-year-old heart continues to drive changes we are only beginning to measure. We came to Jupiter looking for a guardian. What we found was something older, stranger, and far less concerned with our fate than we ever wanted to admit. In the next chapter, we descend into the storms themselves, into the great red spot as it dies, and into the winds that are rising to take its place. Let us go now into the eye of the storm, the great red spot. There is no other object like it in the known solar system. A single, coherent storm that has raged, without pause, for at least 3.5 centuries, and almost certainly far longer. When the first astronomers turned their crude telescopes toward Jupiter and saw a crimson blemish on its face, that storm was already ancient. It was already old when Newton was formulating the laws of gravity. It was already turning when the last great sailing ships crossed the oceans of Earth, and it is spinning still. But it is not what it was. Picture, for a moment, the sheer violence of this thing. The winds at its edge scream around its perimeter at speeds exceeding 400 miles per hour, faster than any tornado ever recorded on our planet, sustained not for minutes, but for centuries. It rotates counterclockwise, a colossal wheel of gas turning against the bands that surround it, dragging the atmosphere into a spiral so vast that the entire Earth could vanish inside it without touching the edges. And its color, that deep, brooding red, the source of its name and its mystery. We are still not entirely certain what paints it. Some chemistry in the upper clouds, some interaction between sunlight and the compounds dredged up from below, staining the storm a color that has no easy explanation. A blush of unknown origin on the face of a giant. For 300 years, it seemed permanent. Now the measurements tell a colder story. In the late 19th century, the great red spot stretched some 30,000 miles across, wide enough to swallow 3 Earths side by side. By the middle of the 20th century, it had narrowed. By the turn of the 21st, it had narrowed further. And in recent years, the shrinking has accelerated. The storm contracting, growing rounder, growing taller, its ancient oval compressing into something smaller and stranger with every passing season. The storm that outlived empires is running out of time. And here we arrive at one of the deepest and most unsettling ideas in all of science. Nothing is permanent, not even the things that outlast civilizations, not even the features so old and so vast that they seem woven into the fabric of reality itself. Everything that turns eventually stops. Everything that burns eventually cools. The great red spot is not exempt. It never was. We simply mistook slowness for permanence. We do that often, don't we? We look at the mountains and call them eternal, though they rise and erode over millions of years. We look at the stars and call them fixed, though they are racing through the galaxy at speeds we cannot feel. We look at the great storm on Jupiter and call it forever, because 3 centuries is longer than we can easily imagine. And 3 centuries is nothing. A single breath in the life of a planet. The universe does not deal in permanence. It deals in duration. And every duration, no matter how vast, comes to an end. But the death of the great red spot is not the whole story, because as the old storm fades, the atmosphere around it is not growing calm. It is growing more violent. The winds within the spot have been intensifying even as the spot itself shrinks. As if the storm, compressed into a smaller space, is spinning faster in its final years. Like a figure skater pulling in her arms, drawing her limbs close to her body and accelerating into a blur. The same energy, concentrated into a tighter form, becomes more furious, not less. And across the rest of the planet, other changes are stirring. New storms have erupted in Jupiter's bands. Vast disturbances that flare up, race across tens of thousands of miles, and reshape entire regions of the atmosphere. The famous belts and zones, those orderly stripes of cream and rust, have been seen to fade and darken, to shift and transform in ways that overturn what we thought we understood about the planet's rhythms. Jupiter's face is not a fixed portrait. It is a canvas being repainted constantly by forces we are still struggling to name. There is a lesson here, buried in the churning gas. When something old and stable begins to break down, the energy it once contained does not simply vanish. It is released. It finds new channels, new forms, new expressions. The collapse of one great order becomes the birth of many smaller chaoses. This is true of storms. It may be true of far more than storms. Watch the way a great institution falls, and you will see the same pattern. Watch the way an old certainty crumbles in a human mind, and you will see it again. The end of one immense, stable thing is rarely a quiet fading. It is a redistribution of power, a scattering of force, a dangerous, unpredictable interval before a new order takes hold, if a new order takes hold at all. Jupiter is teaching us how giants die, and below the visible storms, deeper than any of our instruments can easily reach. There is a mystery that makes the whole picture stranger still. The great red spot is not merely a shallow swirl on the surface. Recent soundings suggest its roots plunge deep into the atmosphere, hundreds of miles down, anchored to structures we cannot see, drawing on energy from the planet's warm interior. It is less like a hurricane and more like a tree with roots sunk deep into hidden soil, which means its death is not a surface event. It is a symptom. Something is changing not just in the clouds we can observe, but in the vast, hidden machinery beneath them. The winds are accelerating. The heat is redistributing. The delicate balance that held that storm together for centuries is being disturbed at a level we can barely probe. And we do not yet know why. We do not know whether this is a phase, a temporary fluctuation in a planet whose rhythms span thousands of years, or the beginning of a genuine transformation. That uncertainty is its own kind of horror. Because we are so used to explanation. We are a species that names things, that measures them, that files them neatly into categories and calls that understanding. To stand before a phenomenon this immense and be forced to say, we do not fully know why it is happening. That is a humbling, almost too heavy to bear. Here is the largest storm in the solar system, unraveling in real time. And the finest minds our species has ever produced can only watch and record and wonder. We are witnesses to something we cannot control and cannot fully comprehend. And perhaps that is the truest description of the human condition itself. We arrived late to a universe already ancient and already in motion. We opened our eyes on a stage whose play had been running for billions of years before our first line was spoken. We do not set the rules. We do not turn the great wheels. We can only observe them turning and try, desperately, beautifully, to understand. The great red spot will die, perhaps in our lifetimes, perhaps within a few generations, and when it does, humanity will have watched, from beginning to end, the death of a storm that has burned since before our modern world existed. We will have measured the fading of something that once seemed eternal. That is a rare and terrible privilege. To live in the moment when a permanent thing reveals that it was never permanent at all. But the storms are only the visible face of Jupiter's unrest. Beneath the beauty and the violence of the clouds lies something even more powerful. An invisible force that reaches millions of miles into space. that captures and accelerates matter into a weapon, that convulses in ways that may tell us far more about what is truly changing. The magnetic field. And what is happening within it may be the most alarming signal of all. There is a second Jupiter, one you cannot see, beyond the visible planet, beyond the storms and the bands and the fading crimson eye. There stretches an invisible empire of force, a magnetic field so immense that if your eyes could perceive it, it would dominate the night sky. Larger than the full moon. Larger, in fact, than anything else in our sky except the sun itself. A structure that dwarfs the visible planet many times over, sprawling millions of miles into the dark in every direction. This is Jupiter's true reach. The planet you see is only the core of a far greater presence. Around it coils this vast magnetic cocoon, the magnetosphere, a bubble of force so enormous that it would take the light from the sun several minutes to cross it. If it glowed, it would be the largest single object in the entire solar system. Larger than the sun, a ghost the size of a star, wrapped around a world. And it is born, remember? From that ocean of metallic hydrogen churning in the planet's depths. Here we touch something profound. The most powerful structure Jupiter possesses is not made of matter you could hold. It is made of force, of field, of the invisible geometry of magnetism, generated by an ocean no eye will ever see, extending into a space no hand will ever touch. The greatest thing about Jupiter is a thing that is, in the ordinary sense, not a thing at all. The universe, it turns out, is ruled by the invisible. Gravity you cannot see. Magnetism you cannot see. The forces that shape galaxies and bind atoms and steer the fates of worlds. All of them silent, all of them unseen, all of them infinitely more powerful than the visible matter they command. We are creatures of the eye. We trust what we can see. And the universe conducts its most important business entirely in the dark. Now consider what this invisible empire does. It captures. The magnetosphere is a net, and it is constantly fishing the space around Jupiter for charged particles, electrons and ions streaming from the sun, and crucially, a torrent of matter erupting from one of Jupiter's own moons. Ifiko, the most volcanically active body in the solar system. A tortured world, squeezed and kneaded by Jupiter's gravity until its interior melts, until it spews sulfur and molten rock from hundreds of volcanoes across its surface. Ice bleeds into space, and Jupiter's magnetic field catches that blood. It gathers the particles hurled off Io into a vast, glowing ring, a donut of radioactive plasma encircling the planet, invisible and lethal, a river of charged matter following the invisible lines of the magnetic field. Then it accelerates them. It whips them to tremendous speeds, funneling them into belts of radiation so intense that they represent one of the most hostile environments in the entire solar system. This is where our machines go to die. Every spacecraft we have sent to study Jupiter closely must run a gauntlet through these radiation belts. And the radiation does not care that these machines are the finest instruments our species can build. It penetrates their shielding. It scrambles their circuits. It degrades their sensors and corrupts their memory, and slowly, relentlessly, cooks them from the inside. Our explorers arrive at Jupiter knowing they are being sentenced to death, racing to gather every possible measurement before the radiation silences them for good. Think about the courage encoded in that. Not human courage, the machines feel nothing, but the courage of the choice to build them, to launch them. to send them knowingly into an environment that will destroy them, because the knowledge they return is worth the sacrifice. We hurl our most precious creations into the fire, not to save them, but to learn. It is a strangely noble act, a species reaching into a place it cannot survive, through instruments that cannot survive either, simply to understand. And what those doomed instruments have revealed is deeply strange. Jupiter's magnetic field is not the tidy, symmetrical thing our models predicted. It is lumpy, irregular, distorted in ways that suggest the dynamo generating it, that ocean of metallic hydrogen, is far more complex and turbulent than we imagined. There appear to be regions where the field emerges with startling intensity, and other regions where it behaves in ways no simple model can explain. The engine at Jupiter's heart is not running smoothly. It is stranger and more chaotic than the clean equation suggested. And at the poles, this invisible empire announces itself in light, the auroras of Jupiter. On Earth, the northern and southern lights are a delicate gift, shimmering curtains of green and violet, born when particles from the sun cascade into our upper atmosphere. Beautiful, gentle, fleeting. A quiet reminder that our own magnetic field is doing its silent work, deflecting the solar wind, keeping us safe. Jupiter's auroras are not gentle. They are the most powerful auroras in the solar system. Permanent, blazing rings of light around each pole, pouring out energy thousands of times greater than anything Earth has ever produced. They glow not only in visible light, but in ultraviolet and X-rays. Wavelengths of pure violence, invisible to us, marking an ongoing storm of energy where the magnetic field slams charged particles into the atmosphere with unrelenting force. And here is the detail that should stop you cold. Jupiter's auroras are not fed only by the sun, as ours are. They are fed by the planet itself, by its own rotation, by the matter shed from its moons, by an internal engine of energy that never rests. Even in the dead of a Jovian night, even shielded from the solar wind, those auroras burn. Jupiter does not need the sun to light its poles. It has its own fire, a world that lights its own sky. There is something almost mythological in that. We are accustomed to thinking of the sun as the source of all light and energy in the solar system, the one true fire around which everything cold and dark must huddle. And here is Jupiter, generating its own auroral fire from within, blazing in wavelengths we cannot even see. A second center of energy in a system that was supposed to have only one. It is a reminder that power in this universe is not always where we expect it, that the small, bright sun is not the only engine turning, that in the cold outer dark, a failed star still burns with its own strange light. But why does any of this matter to us? Because the magnetic field is the most sensitive instrument we have for reading Jupiter's inner state. It is the pulse of the planet, a direct expression of what is happening in that hidden metallic ocean. And that pulse is not steady. The field flexes, it shifts, its structure changes over time in ways that hint at deeper movements below, at currents and instabilities in the dynamo that generates it. When the magnetic field of a planet begins to behave unexpectedly, it is telling you that something has changed at its very core. Not the clouds, not the surface storms, the core. And that is the frontier of our fear and our fascination. We can watch the great red spot fade with our telescopes. We can measure the winds and map the bands. But the magnetic field lets us listen to the heart of the beast. And the heart is where the true story is being written. The storms above are symptoms. The dynamo below is the cause. And the dynamo is speaking to us in the language of force. In convulsions and irregularities, we are only beginning to translate. Something in the depths of Jupiter is stirring, and the invisible empire around it is carrying the signal outward into space, where our dying machines strain to catch it before the radiation claims them. But there is one more piece to this puzzle. The largest piece of all. The piece that transforms Jupiter from a distant curiosity into something that touches our own survival directly. The question of what Jupiter does to us. And the answer is far more double-edged than the comforting stories ever admitted. Now we arrive at the heart of the matter. The question that turns a distant planet into a personal concern. What does Jupiter do to us? For decades, the answer we told ourselves was simple and comforting. Jupiter is our shield, our guardian, the great gravitational sentinel standing between the fragile inner solar system and the swarm of killers lurking in the outer dark. And there is real truth in this. Jupiter's immense gravity does intercept objects that might otherwise threaten us. It does capture comets, deflect asteroids, absorb impacts that would be catastrophic if they reached the Earth. We watched it happen. In 1994, a comet named Shoemaker-Levy 9 was torn apart by Jupiter's gravity and then, piece by piece, swallowed. 21 fragments slammed into the giant's atmosphere over the course of days, each impact releasing energy beyond anything our species has ever unleashed. The scars left behind were larger than the entire Earth. And every scientist watching understood the same silent truth. That could have been us. That is exactly the kind of impact that ended the age of the dinosaurs. And Jupiter took the blow instead. So the Guardian story felt earned, felt true. But it was only half the truth. Because gravity does not discriminate between saving and destroying. The same force that pulls a comet into Jupiter and away from us can, with a slightly different geometry, pull that comet inward, toward the sun, toward the inner planets, toward the Earth. Jupiter is not a wall that only stops things. It is a lens, a gravitational lens that bends the paths of everything that passes near it. And a lens can focus danger just as easily as it deflects it. The Guardian is also a hunter. Consider the deep architecture of the solar system. Out beyond Neptune lies a vast reservoir of icy bodies, comets and fragments, remnants of creation, drifting in the frozen dark. And there is a swarm of asteroids between Mars and Jupiter, held in a delicate gravitational balance. Jupiter's gravity reaches into both of these populations constantly. It stirs them. It nudges them. It plucks objects from stable orbits and sends them wandering. Some it flings safely away. Some it hurls inward. Every so often, one of those inward-flung objects finds the Earth. We owe our existence, in part, to Jupiter's protection. And we may someday owe our destruction to Jupiter's disturbance. The same hand, giving and taking, without preference, without awareness. Without the slightest concern for which outcome befalls the small blue world circling closer to the sun. This is the terrible neutrality of physics. We so badly want the universe to take sides. We want the Guardian to be truly a guardian. A protector who watches over us, who chose us, who cares. But Jupiter chose nothing. Jupiter cares for nothing. It follows the laws of gravity with perfect indifference. And those laws sometimes shelter us and sometimes expose us. And the difference between the two is nothing more than the accident of an orbit, the chance alignment of a passing rock. We survive in the gaps of a giant's indifference. And there is evidence that Jupiter's influence on us runs deeper still, reaching back to the very formation of the world beneath your feet. In the earliest days of the solar system, before the planets had settled into their present orbits, Jupiter is thought to have migrated, to have drifted inward toward the Sun and then back outward again, its enormous gravity sweeping through the young solar system like a wrecking ball through a construction site. This migration reshaped everything. It may have determined why Mars is so small. It may have cleared or scattered the material that would otherwise have built larger inner worlds. It may have delivered water to the early Earth, flinging ice-rich bodies inward from the outer solar system. Water that would one day fill our oceans and make life itself possible. The very seas from which life emerged may have been carried here by the same gravitational forces that could, in another arrangement, have prevented Earth from ever becoming habitable at all. Sit with the weight of that. The water in your body, the oceans that cradle every living thing, the rain, the rivers, the blood in your veins. Some of it may be here because a giant planet, hundreds of millions of miles away, happened to fling the right material toward the inner solar system at the right moment in the deep past. Your existence may be a downstream consequence of Jupiter's ancient wanderings. We are not separate from that giant. We are, in a sense, its children, shaped by its gravity, watered by its influence, protected and endangered by its restless presence across the entire history of our world. The planet you have seen 1,000 times as a bright dot in the evening sky is woven into the story of how you came to exist at all. And this is what makes its present unrest so significant. Because Jupiter is not a fixed object. Its gravitational influence is not a constant, unchanging force. As the planet evolves, as its interior shifts, as its magnetic field convulses, as the great machinery of its being continues to turn, its subtle effects on the rest of the solar system evolve too. The resonances that hold the asteroid belt in its delicate pattern are not eternal. The gravitational nudges that steer comets are not fixed. Everything is in motion. Everything is being negotiated, moment by moment, across billions of years. And we live inside that negotiation. Now, let us be honest and precise, because precision is the only real form of respect for the truth. The changes we see in Jupiter's atmosphere, the fading of the great red spot, the shifting of the bands, the convulsions of the magnetic field, these are not, in themselves, about to hurl a comet at the Earth tomorrow. The timescales of gravitational catastrophe are vast. The odds in any given human lifetime are small. But that is not the point. The point is that we have been living inside a comforting illusion, the illusion that the large things are the stable things, that the guardian is only a guardian, that the great machinery of the solar system is fixed and finished and safe. And Jupiter, in its restlessness, is dismantling that illusion before our eyes. It is showing us that even the most permanent seeming features of our cosmic neighborhood are in flux, that the forces which shaped our past are still active, that the story is not over. The solar system is not a museum. It is a machine that is still running. And we are components inside it, small, recent, fragile components, dependent for our survival on balances we did not create and do not control. The dinosaurs learned this lesson in a single terrible afternoon, when an object that Jupiter's gravity had failed to deflect came screaming out of the sky. They had ruled the Earth for over 100 million years, far longer than we have existed, and it took only one gravitational accident to end them. We are not exempt from that logic. The same forces that ended their reign are still in motion. The same giant that failed to protect them still turns in the outer dark, deflecting some threats, unleashing others, indifferent to which. And now that giant is changing in ways we do not fully understand. A reminder, if we needed one, that we do not sit above the machinery of the cosmos. We sit within it. There is a strange dignity in accepting this, in looking up at that bright point of light and understanding, at last, what it truly is. Not a decoration in our sky, but a force that has shaped our past, guards, and threatens our present, and holds some measure of influence over our future. To live wisely is to live with open eyes, and open eyes turn toward Jupiter, see both a protector and a potential executioner, bound together in a single, indifferent body. We wanted a guardian. We got a giant. And a giant, we are learning, is a far more complicated thing to live beside. In the final chapter, we ask what all of this means, for how we see ourselves, and for the fragile, improbable moment of awareness we are living through here on this small blue world, in the shadow of something vast and changing. So what does it all mean? What do we do with the knowledge that the largest planet in our sky is changing? That its ancient storm is dying, its winds are rising, its magnetic heart is convulsing, and its gravity still holds a quiet, indifferent power over our fate? Perhaps we begin by looking up. Go outside on a clear night and find that bright, steady point of light that does not twinkle the way the stars do. That is Jupiter. It has been there in one position or another for every night of your life, for every night of every human life that has ever been lived. Our ancestors saw it. The first people to walk out of Africa saw it. The builders of the pyramids saw it. Every lover, every warrior, every child who ever looked up in wonder, they all saw that same point of light, and not one of them knew what you now know. They did not know it was a failed star, glowing with its own inner heat. They did not know it held an ocean of metallic hydrogen, or a magnetic field larger than the sun, or auroras blazing in wavelengths no eye can see. They did not know its gravity had shaped the very oceans of the earth, or that its ancient storm had been turning, unbroken, through the entire span of their brief and precious lives. You know these things, and that is not a small thing to know. We are the first generation of humans who can truly see Jupiter, not as a light, but as a world. We have sent our machines across 400 million miles of vacuum to touch it with our instruments, to descend into its clouds, to map its invisible empire of force. We have watched its storm die in real time. We have listened to the pulse of its metallic heart. In the entire history of our species, hundreds of thousands of years of looking up in ignorance, only we, only now, have been able to know what is truly out there. That is the strange and sacred position we occupy. We are the moment the universe woke up and looked at itself. Think about what that means. For nearly 14 billion years, the cosmos turned in silence. Stars were born and died. Planets formed. Jupiter's great storm churned through the darkness with no one to witness it. Galaxies collided in vast, soundless ballets that no eye ever saw. The universe was magnificent, and it was utterly unwatched. And then, on one small world, matter arranged itself into a form that could look back. That is us. We are the part of the cosmos that became aware of the cosmos. We are stardust that learned to ask questions. The atoms in your body, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, were forged in the hearts of ancient stars, scattered across space in violent deaths, gathered again into the world that made you. You are, quite literally, the universe examining itself. And when you look up at Jupiter and understand it, something extraordinary happens. The cosmos, through you, comes to know one of its own creations. This is not poetry. This is fact, and it reframes everything. Yes, we are small. Yes, we are fragile. Yes, we live at the mercy of forces so vast that our entire history is a flicker against their slow turning. A single gravitational accident could end us, as it ended the dinosaurs. A giant we cannot control turns in the outer dark, and we survive only in the gaps of its indifference. All of this is true, but it is also true that we are the only thing we know of in all that vastness that can comprehend any of it. Jupiter is immense, and Jupiter is powerful, and Jupiter does not know it exists. It cannot marvel at its own storms. It cannot measure its own magnetic field. It cannot look up at anything in wonder. For all its size and force, Jupiter is blind. And we, small, brief, breakable we, can see. There is the true measure of significance. Not size, not force, not permanence. Awareness. The great red spot has turned for centuries, and it never once knew that it was turning. You have lived for a handful of decades, and you know that you are alive. You know that you will die. You know that a storm larger than your entire world is fading 400 million miles away, and you can feel something, awe or fear or wonder, at the knowing. That capacity to feel and to understand is rarer, as far as we can tell, than any planet, any star, any storm in the whole observable universe. Do not let anyone tell you that you are insignificant because you are small. The largest thing in our sky is a mindless giant, and you are a mind. So what do we do with the news that Jupiter is changing? We watch, we measure. We keep sending our brave, doomed machines into the radiation to bring back what they can. We refine our understanding of the giant that shaped us and could someday unmake us. And we do this not out of fear, but out of the deepest and most human of impulses, the need to know, the refusal to look away. Because knowledge is the only real protection we have ever had. We cannot stop Jupiter from changing. We cannot calm its winds, or heal its dying storm, or steady its convulsing heart. But we can understand it, and understanding is the first and greatest act of a conscious being facing a universe far larger than itself. Every threat we have ever overcome, we overcame by first understanding it. Every danger we might someday face from the sky, we will face only if we have first done the patient, unglamorous work of watching and measuring and learning. The dinosaurs never saw it coming. They could not. They had no minds capable of looking up and asking what those lights might mean. No instruments to measure the paths of distant rocks. No way to comprehend the gravitational giant that had failed to protect them. They ruled for 100 million years in magnificent ignorance. And ignorance is what killed them. We are different. Not because we are safe. We are not. But because we can know. And in that difference lies everything. So the next time you find that steady light in the evening sky, look at it for a moment longer than you used to. Let yourself feel the distance. 400 million miles of absolute vacuum, cold beyond imagining. Let yourself feel the scale. A world so large, our own, is a marble beside it. Let yourself feel the strangeness, the metallic ocean, the invisible empire of force, the auroras burning in colors you will never see. the ancient storm quietly dying even as you watch. And then feel this. You are aware of all of it, and it is aware of nothing. That is not a reason for despair. It is a reason for a kind of fierce, quiet gratitude. We were given the improbable gift of consciousness on a fragile world in the shadow of a giant. And we use that gift to understand the giant, and the world, and ourselves. For a brief moment in the long history of an indifferent cosmos, matter opened its eyes and looked around and understood where it was. That moment is now. That matter is you. Something in Jupiter is getting worse, and it is getting worse fast. The storm is dying. The winds are rising. The giant is changing, and we are watching. The first witnesses in all of time, small and mortal and utterly awake, staring across the dark at a force that shaped us and cannot see us. We are the ones who see. And as long as we keep looking, keep learning, keep refusing to turn away, we remain what we have always been at our best. Not the largest thing in the universe, not the most powerful, but something far rarer. The universe, awake, watching itself change, and unafraid to look.